We are done with the forgiving challenge, and we are going back into Judges. And what has it been? 2 months since we did Judges. Seems like yeah, long time, and we get to jump into Judges, into one of the most vile, disgusting eras of it at all. If the whole thing isn't just vile and disgusting, right? Like, so that's that's the way this goes. And to kind of catch us up with Judges, the Jewish Bible, I think, is written at a with a lot of, how I will call, sarcasm in it, but with a lot of what I would also call emotional intelligence, and you see that in here and there are people that are being said to be righteous, and they aren't so righteous, right? Like this is what we end up saying. You can close that door, Kathy, and because I think Alzheimer's is going to be making noise out there today. So this happens a lot, and what we kind of see at the very beginning of Judges is there's this cycle that they cycle down into sin, and things get terrible and awful, and they realize it, and they come back out of it. But that doesn't work the same way each time. It's very interesting that it's almost like the best judge that's presented to us is Deborah, which is a lady. I remember when we talked about that a few months ago, that I was fascinated on that, because even still today I hear, like, the only reason why Deborah was allowed to be a judge is because the men wouldn't stand up. And it's like, no, that's not what's presented in the story. It's presented much more similar in a Hannah, Mary, like oh, that's kind of manner, and it's almost like it's, I'll have a woman defeat you, type of thing to deal with your pride. And so it just keeps getting worse. Gideon ends up, like, they end up having kind of these other idols to these other gods in there. He seems like he's good. He's kind of feckless and weak at the same time. He keeps testing God. That's like the 300 people that God gets him down. And remember, that battle sounded like how David defeats the Philistines later on, after Judges here, when David goes up with one other guy, and just with a few lights and all of that stuff, causes the Philistines to go into a panic. Shows that God is supplying these victories, and it's nothing else. And God's trying to get Gideon to that place, and it's like he's got to force him to go there. And I'm just going by this now because it's helping me remember. But then Japheth is the guy who is like, God, if you give me this victory, I'll sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house. And that was his daughter. And so he sacrifices his daughter. And what we see in that, because we have the story about Abraham, Isaac, and we have all these other stories, is that that's not God. That's not God. And so we see this guy who claims to be part of God's elect and chosen and all that stuff, but doesn't actually know God and what he does. And that's very true. I was just talking to, I won't go into it, but I was talking to someone here recently who was claiming very highly to be a follower of Jesus, and yet everything that they were talking about, it was all about the law, and like, you got to do these things in order to be saved. Now, they wouldn't say that because they're a good Lutheran, but like, it's like, oh no, by grace I'm saved. But like, these people need to get in order, right? Like that was, it's fascinating. It just reminds me of that. It's like these people that they know the name of Jesus, they know the stories around it, but their hearts are far from me. If you would want to quote something from the Old Testament and New. So then you have, and that is a humbleness lesson for us all, that we come to the faith with humility, right? That's like, I don't necessarily know everything. I don't necessarily have all the answers. I think I may have glimpses and hunches, and we live inside of those. but I don't think we ever have a confidence that we know everything. But we are assured that even in our own ignorance, even in our own sinfulness, that Jesus comes and saves us. And so that's a good place to be. Samson is the most fascinating one that we talked about. Samson is Israel. I remember this because Mark and I were kind of getting ready for the Judges sermon series. And he said, you had something interesting about Samson. I was like, what is that? And I was flipping through the notes. And I went, oh, yeah, Samson is Israel, that he kind of likes to womanize with the other nations around him, right? That's what Israel definitely did during this time, and gets involved with all this stuff and says that he's above it all that stuff. And then they basically take them all down. And we see that Samson, energized at the end of his life, is able to cause it all to come crumbling down. Like that's the fortifications and the strongholds of the world. And I kind of wonder if there's like a Messiah Jesus illusion there in the end of Samson's life. That's not saying Samson is ever righteous. I don't think he's being presented as that. I think he's just being presented as Israel, and Israel now is this arrogant, let's see here, promiscuous, violent, and arrogant nation. Is that all? Yeah, like that's. I think we see, and that's not. And that's just a Chris Escher thing. I'll continue to work that out. I've not heard that anywhere, and but like most things, it's correct. I don't know.
I've heard it.
Yeah. Exactly. Somewhere else. So now we get into the very end of Judges. We will see if we'll be able to end today. These are some longer chapters, so we may not be. My plan going forward, we're not going to maybe get through all this. My plan going forward is, so I guess I'm going to try to split this up into two different ones, and then the last 2 Thursdays that we have before Christmas, then before that we'll go over Christmas stuff. I'm kind of hot on Christmas right now. I taught the Christmas story to in breakout sessions to the middle schoolers, and so they had a fun time with it. So so I'm kind of hot on it right now. So we can do all of that. So let us continue here. So we will be in Judges 17. Did anyone, before we start reading, have any remarks or anything that they would like to say? Nothing? Everyone's quiet? Well, let's start saying weird stuff then. That way you guys start talking. All right. Let's listen to this. Let's see if this can get us talking. All right. Let me share the screen. Let's see. I don't remember what to do here. I'll watch some video. Share. All right. Here we go.
Now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother,
"The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and on which you put a curse, even saying it in my ears. Here is the silver with me. I took it."
And his mother said,
"May you be blessed by the Lord, my son."
So when he had returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said,
I had wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son, to make a carved image and a molded image. Now, therefore, I will return it to you.
Thus he returned the silver to his mother. Then his mother took 200 shekels of silver and gave them to the silversmith, and he made it into a carved image and a molded image, and they were in the house of Micah. The man Micah had a shrine, and made an ephod and household idols, and he consecrated one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah. He was a Levite and was staying there. The man departed from the city of Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he could find a place. Then he came to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, as he journeyed. And Micah said to him,
Where do you come from?
I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am on my way to find a place to stay.
Dwell with me, and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, a suit of clothes, and your sustenance.
So the Levite went in. Then the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. So Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in the house of Micah. Then Micah said,
Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, since I have a Levite as priest.
Oh, there's the
In
end of
those
it.
days there was no
All right. So what do we hear there? That was interesting. What stood out?
Well, he went to the right tribe anyway. He had his priest.
But like that. So he went to the right tribe to get his priest. Yeah, like that's over there. But yeah. So what else? What else you notice? We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that.
Created an image.
What?
He created a molten image.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Big no.
Yeah. He's creating like all these different things and like household idols and
Let's make up a religion and play by it.
yeah. Like that's
Even I would have known better.
yeah. Even you would have known better.
And he offered the Levite 10 shekels a year, right?
Mhm.
It said, but yet he gave 200 pieces of silver. How much is that for that molten image?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So is that
Let's see here.
a shekel?
Shekel.
What
They call it shekel.
is that? A small or is that this really huge shekel?
Okay, so in the Jewish Bible, you said they're doing it the same. They're all shekels. Okay, so like that's I don't know. Sure,
It's an image.
1100?
1100.
Shekels.
Oh,
You're the numbers guy.
I am the numbers guy. What verse was the 1100? Okay, I see it. And he said his mother, the 1100 shekels of silver were taken from you, on which I don't know.
Cut you short, it's okay.
Unless the 11 is playing into it there, because there's 12 tribes, and so much like in Revelation, 6 is a number of incompleteness. I'm wondering if 11 is taking place in that, where it's kind of showing that Israel's not in its full glory. I don't know, because 12 is kind of like a full number. Like that's in 12 disciples. We end up seeing with Jesus 12 tribes, like in the Old Testament. So I don't know.
Good shot though.
Yeah, like that. Sounded intelligent. Huh? Sounded.
Then his son was his priest, but he got kicked to the curb.
So here's things too that we've got to remember, is that this stuff isn't written down. It's not like they're watching the news when this stuff is being written down. All these people know a lot of the same stories we know. Okay, so Bethlehem. What is the big thing about Bethlehem? Who's from Bethlehem? Jesus, but they wouldn't know about Jesus yet. But who else? That's David. Like that's a big city for David. That's why Jesus was born there, right? Like so, like that's a big city. So like that's kind of like honing in to some memories. Most likely, when this stuff was being written down, David was already here and gone, type of thing. And so, like that's reminding us of some things. Levite is a big one. This is the one Gloria talked about, and I want to make sure that we didn't skip over what she said. It's but also before we talk about the Levite, when Micah sets up a shrine and an ephod and household idols and conscripted one of his sons to become his priest, when he conscripts one of his sons to become his priest, kind of what does that kind of sound like? Does that sound, it reminded me of something that hasn't happened yet in Judges, but is about to happen. Does anyone remember?
Saul?
No. To me, that sounds like Eli. Eli's coming up in just a few. Now, Eli is like the head priest, but his sons are scoundrels, remember? Mm-hmm. And he sets them up as where they're in charge of the sacrifices and all those things. You know,
they're skimming.
Yeah, they're skimming and all of that. And so I think you're seeing like the depravity of Israel here, where they're using the things that they know and the things of God to get whatever they want. And the author here tells us this is what they're doing in verse 6. So right after, he consecrated one of his sons to become his own priest, the author does a deep eye roll and then says, in those days, there was no king in Israel and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. I think we're meant to see that as like a deep eye roll moment.
That's a mantra after a while.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole, and it's actually kind of funny. So most likely what we're going to call that Judges sermon series is in his eyes. And so on this page, I was workshopping that title, like on that, you can see it right there. Like, so like that's, I was workshopping the title. So then getting back to Gloria's part about the Levite, at the very end, why does he have a Levite working for him? Like why is he glad he's got it? He wants to prosper, but he's like, now the Lord, which is obviously, he's just a part of his pantheon of gods, right? Like now the Lord will be good to me since I have a Levite as priest. Like he's trying to get God on his side.
Yeah, but he's got a Levite working in a shrine church.
Yeah, exactly. But he's using the Levite like a lucky rabbit's foot. Yeah. Like now God will be happy. And that's, and so, yeah. And so you kind of have this kind of notion here, and we're seeing this mantra, as Mick called it, with they're doing what is right in their own eyes. So he's got a Levite because he's like, well, as long as I cover all the bases, I'll be all right. Like that's, I'll be good to go then. So does anyone want to add anything to chapter 17 here? Let's do 18. 18's a little longer. So here we go. Chapter 18. Hit this one. And we'll start here.
In those days there was no king in Israel. And in those days the tribe of the Danites was seeking an inheritance for itself to dwell in. For until that day their inheritance among the tribes of Israel had not fallen to them. So the children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their territory, men of valor from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out the land and search it. They said to them,
"Go, search the land."
So they went to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. While they were at the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned aside and said to him,
"Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What do you have here?"
Thus and so Micah did for me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest.
Well, please inquire of God that we may know whether the journey on which we will go will be prosperous.
Go in peace. The presence of the Lord will be with you on your way.
So the 5 men departed and went to Laish. They saw the people who were there, how they dwelt safely, in the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and secure. There were no rulers in the land who might put them to shame for anything. They were far from the Sidonians, and they had no ties with anyone. Then the spies came back to their brethren at Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brethren said to them,
What is your report? Arise, let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and indeed it is very good. Would you do nothing? Do not hesitate to go and enter to possess the land. When you go, you will come to a secure people and a large land. For God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is on the earth.
And 600 men of the family of the Danites went from there, from Zorah and Eshtaol, armed with weapons of war. Then they went up and encamped at Kirjath-jearim in Judah. Therefore they call that place Mahane Dan to this day. There it is, west of Kirjath-jearim. And they passed from there to the mountains of Ephraim, and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the country of Laish answered and said to their brethren,
Do you know that there are in these houses an ephod, household idols, a carved image, and a molded image? Now therefore, consider what you should do.
So they turned aside there, and came to the house of the young Levite man, to the house of Micah, and greeted him. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were of the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. Then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the land went up. Entering there, they took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the molded image. The priests stood at the entrance of the gate with the 600 men who were armed with weapons of war. When these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, and the household idols, and the molded image, the priest said to them,
What are you doing?
Be quiet, put your hand over your mouth, and come with us. Be a father and a priest to us. Is it better for you to be a priest to the household of one man, or that you be a priest to a tribe and a family in Israel?
So the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod, the household idols, and the carved image, and took his place among the people. Then they turned and departed, and put the little ones, the livestock, and the goods in front of them. When they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. And they called out to the children of Dan. So they turned around and said to Micah,
What ails you, that you have gathered such a company?
You have taken away my gods, which I made, and the priest, and you have gone away. Now what more do I have? How can you say to me, What ails you?
Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry men fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household.
Then the children of Dan went their way. And when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. So they took the things Micah had made, and the priest who had belonged to him, and went to Laish, to a people quiet and secure. And they struck them with the edge of the sword, and burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no ties with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth-rehob. So they rebuilt the city and dwelt there. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city formerly was Laish. Then the children of Dan set up for themselves the carved image. And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's carved image which he made, all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh.
Hey. Such excitement. Such excitement. Oh, let me do my job here. Here we go. All right. What stood out to you on this one? There's a lot going on in this one.
This Levite must really be pretty important, but they wanted him.
Well, the Levites, they are the 13th tribe of Israel. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. And they are the priestly race. So all Levites are priests. So like in the Christmas story, and Zechariah is doing, Elizabeth's husband, when he's doing his priestly duties, he's a Levite. And so that's just how it was set up from the beginning. So yeah, they kind of view them as this thing, so much so that you can tell that Micah is treating him like a lucky rabbit's foot, that he's got him to go over here. But you can tell that even the Levite has kind of lost his way, like here. And so they're all treating him with respect and honoring him, but no one's really being all that righteous here. Like it's kind of might makes right. Yeah. What else kind of stood out to you?
The first thing I noticed was that back in verse 10, the place where there's nothing lacking, and that made me think of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, the Garden of Eden, and also the original promise of the land, like it was a land flowing with milk and honey. So that's a good connection. Yeah, it's a good connection there. And I think that's kind of intentional. Like that, it's kind of reminding us of, to quote the current sermon series, like the abundance of God and like all that, but those previous promises there. So I think that's a good thing to remember, because I think it's written down there like that intentionally.
The second thing it seemed really to stand out was the fact that those idols aren't protecting anyone.
They're not protecting anyone. Well, it's almost like they're just possessions, right?
Micah thought they would help him, and they didn't.
That's actually a good observation. That's a good observation. That's like they were just able to be stolen pretty easily, and so he like when he realizes he can't overpower them, right? He goes away with his tail between his legs.
Also, the Dans are playing half and half here. They want the Levite priest, but they're still worshiping idols.
Okay, so yeah.
So I mean, my initial reaction reading this would be, oh, the Dans are coming to Micah's house. Boy, are they going to be really ticked off over these idols?
They're not.
And they're not. Okay.
They're not.
And then they say to the Levite priest who's administering to these idols, tell me what God's got in store for us.
Yeah.
And just, make up your mind already.
Yeah.
Are you a Jew or aren't you?
Yeah.
It's almost like football. They're playing both ends against the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would they believe this Levite who was administering to Micah in this house with all these idols?
I think,
why would he linger there in the first place? I mean, to me, he's not much of a priest.
I think what they're saying or trying to say is, see, it isn't just Micah. It's happening to everybody else. Everyone is a tribe.
The tribe of Dan and this priest are well met. They were made for each other. Yeah. There is no well of integrity anywhere. Just look at how the Dans decide to get their inheritance.
Right.
Hardly in a righteous way, taking on the weakest of possible people to acquire their own Eden, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah. So you see, like, we're getting back to that whole line of everyone is doing. There's no king in the land. Everyone's doing what is right in their own eyes. They're right in their own eyes, and so that's you get here, and it's just getting a little worse as we kind of go through all these. Couple of things I noticed I thought were interesting. We've talked a lot about them, but because I'm a numbers guy, I don't know if the 5 people from Dan has any kind of significance. 5's an important number because it's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The Pentateuch. I don't know if that has any significance at all. It's kind of showing like some deterioration there. But you also have 600 fighting men, which is kind of the same sense as like not quite enough. Right. But that also may not be valid. Any arguments there? So, did anyone else? Was there anything else about this one? But yeah, I really liked like going into like they destroy Laish, and like that's just like they decimate them and then change the name to Dan, and that's still like the name that we know from all the stories of, all of that. So yeah, they did what was right in their own eyes. And you could tell they didn't destroy the idols. No. Like that's, we've gone full into idol worship now. Full in. All right. Well, maybe we can get through all of this. We will see. We will see. All right. Chapter 19. Ooh, played the harlot against them. That sounds good. Here we go.
And it came to pass in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him, and went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there 4 whole months. Then her husband arose and went after her, to speak kindly to her, and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. Then it came to pass on the 4th day that they arose early in the morning, and he stood to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law,
"Refresh your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way."
So they sat down, and the 2 of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man,
"Please be content to stay all night, and let your heart be merry."
And when the man stood to depart, his father-in-law urged him. So he lodged there again. Then he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. But the young woman's father said,
"Please refresh your heart."
So they delayed until afternoon, and both of them ate. And when the young man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him,
"Look, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow, go your way early, so that you may get home."
However, the man was not willing to spend that night. So he rose and departed, and came to opposite Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. With him were the 2 saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. They were near Jebus, and the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master,
Come, please, and let us turn aside into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it.
But his master said to him,
We will not turn aside here into a city of foreigners who are not of the children of Israel. We will go on to Gibeah. Come, let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night in Gibeah or in Ramah.
And they passed by and went their way. And the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there to go in to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them into his house to spend the night. Just then, an old man came in from his work in the field at evening, who also was from the mountains of Ephraim. He was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he raised his eyes, he saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said,
Where are you going, and where do you come from?
We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judah. Now I am going to the house of the Lord. But there is no one who will take me into his house, although we have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for myself, for your female servant, and for the young man who is with your servant. There is no lack of anything.
Peace be with you. However, let all your needs be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in the open square.
So he brought him into his house, and gave fodder to the donkeys. And they washed their feet, and ate and drank. As they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. They spoke to the master of the house, the old man.
Bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally.
But the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them,
No, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly. Seeing this man has come into my house, do not commit this outrage. Look, here is my virgin daughter and the man's concubine. Let me bring them out now, humble them, and do with them as you please. But to this man, do not do such a vile thing.
But the men would not heed him. So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, they let her go. Then the woman came as the day was dawning and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was, till it was light. When her master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way, there was his concubine fallen at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. And he said to her,
Get up, and let us be going.
But there was no answer. So the man lifted her onto the donkey. And the man got up and went to his place. When he entered his house, he took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. And so it was that all who saw it said, No such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, confer, and speak up.
Okay. Cheerful. All right. Let's go through this one. This is kind of a weird yeah, what makes you say that? Yeah. So this sounds just like the Sodom and Gomorrah story. Right? Mm-hmm. Like it It sounds just like that. Now, that story, are you familiar with that story? Yeah. So it's almost beat for beat. Like that. That's
turned back to it and it was going down. It was almost identical, except that with Lot, it was 2 daughters, and this one, it was a daughter and a concubine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like it's, yeah.
When you think that they have reached the depth of depravity, they come back and they dig deeper.
Yeah.
Simply mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is.
To my mind.
It is. And I think that is.
Now, what's the point?
I think the point is just like
prove the depravity.
Yeah, you can't look away from it. Like you can't go. There's some that are okay here. Yeah, I think that what happens there at the end where he sends the 12 pieces, like that.
Look what you've done.
Like that's well, and I don't know if it's like a look, but it's just like just connecting this. I mean, we've seen Dan fall, and all of this is still like he makes a point that you know that this is the children of Israel that are doing this. You know, they're like, we could stay in Jubas or whatever it is, Jerusalem, and he's like, no, we're not going to stay with foreigners. Like they want you to know that, like the story goes out of its way to tell you that this is people of Israel. Like that's and you know just how it all has fallen and destroyed itself, right? Like that's and again I'll go back. I'm reminded of this. Like this is why I think we should pay attention to the Bible, because what people would want these stories told about themselves if there were not a higher purpose to all this, you know, like that's you got to look at the propaganda and all this stuff too.
To recognize the depravity that you will sink to without God.
Yeah, like I think without God and just recognize the depravity that you can sink to.
Things we can think up to do to each other.
Yeah. Like, cause that's like, yeah, it's beat for beat. Sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah. That's one of my own things. Also, and this, I'm almost scared to say this. I'm not going to say it quite yet.
You want me to say it?
What are you going to say?
Father-in-law has a crystal ball.
Oh, that's not what I was talking about.
Well, I mean,
where's that at? Where is that at?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He kept trying to detain them and keep them.
Oh, okay.
He did not want them to leave.
Yeah, he would not let them leave.
He was not protecting his son-in-law. He was protecting his concubine daughter.
Yeah.
So what's with that?
Like that's and he may know that it's like
They may have heard.
Yeah, that it's like it's all bad out there. You're safe here. That's an interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there when I was thinking about him detaining them.
Which is why he brought him in from the town square in the first place, saying you're not going to be safe here tonight.
Yeah, that was the man in the village. Yeah, and like Phil says that is beat for beat Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, like that's like they and like that we may know them carnally. Like they're not even hiding it. You know, like that's just.
Didn't it seem ironic that he went to get his wife back to her town and talk to his father and stay there night after night as though he really cared, and then in the end, you know, they didn't respect the women as humans, but they wanted to preserve the man. It's just
no, that's definitely the case. That's definitely the case.
Plus, this is a Levite.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and this is the Levite too doing all this. Yeah. Like this is.
Is there any symbolism that the concubine came from Bethlehem?
So So I think so. I think we're definitely like just with the reoccurring mantra that's going on. In those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Like that's and the next stories. I think we have like Ruth, but that doesn't really count. The next stories we have is the Samuels, where we get into the kings, and we end up finding out that David at the end of his life is just as depraved as the rest of them. But that's
they did not have the right king. They got kings, but they didn't have the right one.
Yeah,
they still didn't get it.
Yeah. And so like this is and you see that with King Saul and David, like it kind of brings into alignment some of these, because this is like awful stuff. And you can tell what the authors are doing here, that they're connecting this to the overall righteousness of the people that is around. Now, here's the thing that I'm even scared. So before I say this, everyone's got to put their big boy and big girl pants on, got to make sure everything's buttoned up. But this sounds like the beginning of Luke, when they're going around, they can't find a place to stay. And I wonder if Luke is using this. I don't know. I don't know. It's very Luke uses 1st and 2nd Samuel for his Christmas story. And this is weirdly in proximity to that. And Luke makes a big deal out of there was no room for them anywhere. And if we connect that to the ethics that were in the Middle East at this time, there still are, and the ethics that was written all through the laws of Moses is that you would take in the sojourner.
Yeah.
You would take in the visitor. You would take in like all these things. And I don't know if that's a valid argument, but we see people not being taken in type of thing. And then we see that the transverse to that is what is actually in play here, is that, when someone's new around, we get our jollies off of them. We abuse them. We take everything, from them and all that stuff. So like that's, and I don't know if that's valid or not, but I do think it is valid that ethic of Moses saying that you take in the sojourner, you take in that all that is just out of the window, that there were no room for them anywhere.
It wasn't the Levites' concubine, it was the old man in the house's daughter.
Was it her husband that had come back? Because he got confusing.
He threw out the concubine.
Offered to well, they used concubine for the first one.
Yeah.
That ran away to her father's house, but they left there.
Right.
She was there. And so then they came to, then the owner of the second house went out to them and said to them, "No, my fellows, please do not act so wickedly, since this man has come in, this man and concubine number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has come into my house. Do not commit this act of folly. Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine." So
yeah,
I'm confused.
And that's very much like, and that's a beat for beat of Sodom and Gomorrah. Like the owner gives his own daughters to protect the guests, like that. It
says, when the husband arose in the morning, he opened the doors of the house, went out to continue his journey, and there was the woman, his concubine.
Okay. Yeah. So they threw. Yeah. So it's, and it's just, it's a disgusting, like, and also when he walks out, I wrote the word evil here. It's a few times from a couple times I've read this. where just she's at the door and has her hands on the threshold, and he almost walks over her, says, "Get up, let us be going," and she doesn't answer. Like, just the lack of humanity for any of this is it's just vile and disgusting.
He was almost no better than the others.
Yeah.
Than the perpetrators.
And I think that's trying to be said too, is that there's no righteous, no, not one type of thing. Like, I think that's kind of what's going on here. And then the last verse is Egypt, and what last verse, when it talks about Egypt, what it reminds us of. Because remember, it was doing this before. At the beginning, I'm remembering this now. At the beginning of Judges, it kept reminding us since the time of Egypt. And it hasn't done this for a little bit. And here we are back again with the last verse, and it was that all who saw it said, no such deed has been done or seen from the day the children of Israel came out of the land of Egypt until today. Consider it, confer, and speak up. How those last three words, consider it, confer, and speak up, how is that rendered in the different translations?
Take counsel and decide.
Take counsel and decide?
Think about it, consider it, and tell us what to do.
Okay. What'd you say?
Put your mind to this. It started.
Okay. Put your mind.
Counsel.
Counsel and speak up.
Yeah. Counsel and speak up. Like, it's like, it's almost like a little phrase. Like, that's which is it's an odd little phrase. I don't have any notes on it. But it seems like it's like, this is something bad. This is something bad, and kind of talking about it there. So
it's kind of
she was a virgin, and she was the daughter of someone local, is my interpretation. And so it was she proved in the end to be bigger than life in her death versus than in her life. I don't know, what that means. I haven't read forwards, but maybe the story ends there.
Yeah. And so, like, as I sermonize all these things and think about it, I find myself like drawn into these own stories because I see how I tend to use God for my own advantage, especially in my line of work. Like, it's but about how it even rhymes, and the beginning of that story of Sodom and Gomorrah, along with this story, is that they can't find room to stay anywhere. Like, no one is offering them shelter, all that stuff, which was a huge thing back then. Like, it's just, they've gone full over to evil, and the story is going out of its way. And I think the 12 pieces, limb by limb, all the territories, and I think that's meant to, like, how Levites are involved in the concubines and all that. Like, it's like there's no one that's getting out of this. Like, we're all involved in this horror, right? And that it's impossible to point fingers. And I think that's important for us to see too, is that as we are drawn into these stories of ugliness, and we may see ugliness around ourselves, be it our small communities or our larger ones that we're a part of, it's tempting to point fingers and go, that's the problem. And I think this story is going, right? It seems like it's all of us. And so, because there was no king and we're doing what is right in our own eyes. And so, so that's how we'll say that. So this one ended cheerfully. So glad we could end on a high note here. Yeah. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving.
You got a lot of nerve.
yeah. Everyone have a wonderful time, like that's and after Thanksgiving we'll come together again, close out Judges, and then we'll do Matthew one day and we'll do Luke another, with the Christmas stuff. And the cool thing is this Bible study probably knows where I'm going to go with the Luke stuff and the Matthew stuff too, but it'll probably be new to a lot of people at the same time. And so for everyone that's watching this pre-recorded, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us.